And Ms. Mullenbeck, we're ready when you are.
Glenbrook High School District. One of these days I will remember. Sorry. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education of the Glenbrook High School District 225. And Ms. Smith, could you please have the roll?
Mr. Downing,
Here. Sorry.
Mr. Glowacki,
Present.
Mrs. Hope,
Here.
Ms. Mullenbeck,
Here.
Mr. O'Hara,
Here.
Mr. Schein,
Present.
Dr. Steinberg,
Here.
7 members present.
Next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Dr. Gravel, have there been any changes to the agenda since it was posted and circulated?
There have been no changes.
In that case, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, moving right along, we will start with item 3 on the agenda, which are board and superintendent reports, but we will actually start with the superintendent report.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As we get started today, I have 3 different kind of sections of my report. The first one actually comes, and very important for Dr. Steinberg, which is the True North updated Articles of Agreement. So we've mentioned to our community over the past probably about month that a group of superintendents, special education directors, and assistant superintendents of personnel and business have come together to talk about what True North could look like. We've called it a reimagining committee, if you will. And we have finally reached that point where tomorrow the True North Leadership Council will be presented the first phase of implementing some of those reimagining plans. And that's through the first read of new Articles of Agreement. Now, Articles of Agreement are a little different. School districts don't have them, but joint agreements or cooperatives do, and they ultimately kind of serve as bylaws for the organization. The rules for which certain things must be handled in addition to board policy. Now, these bylaws are really important with respect to True North because some of the challenges the organization has faced is lack of clarity regarding financial elements. In particular, over time, membership fees for being part of True North have gradually increased. Just to put that into perspective, Glenbrook High School District's membership fees for this year are well in excess of $500,000. And in addition to the membership fees, there was also a capital projects assessment in excess of $100,000 to address capital needs that certainly were in the organization. But the important takeaway is that bill exists whether or not we're utilizing any services from True North. And so if you're an organization that's a member of the cooperative and you're getting a $500,000+ bill and you're not using services, it naturally leads you to wonder, is this the best utilization of my resources that otherwise could be utilized for my community, for my students that I'm educating? And with that in mind, the Reimagine Committee said, you know what? We're going to move completely away from membership fee. And so the new bylaws dictate there will be no membership fee. In addition, all of the financial status of district will be in many ways guided by a zero-based budgeting approach. And the way you eliminate membership fees and you leverage that zero-based budgeting approach is that when you're setting tuition rates for programs that True North offers, or when you're setting service rates, if you're contracting with them for certain services, maybe not full programs, but itinerant services, those rates will reflect the exact amount of money that the organization needs to operate. It's the same thing that a non-for-profit would need to do or a private therapeutic day school would do. They would determine what their expenses are. They would determine any excess above expenses that they would need to collect, for example, to pay for capital projects. And those would be reflected in the bills. And you would always make sure that you account for some years you might have high enrollment, other years you might have low enrollment. So you balance all of that out. The Articles Agreement put all of that into black and white text. But also importantly, let's say something comes up under the prior model, the administration and the leadership council that did not have voting representation of superintendents or school administrators, they would make adjustments and then you would have additional unanticipated expenses. Under the new Articles of Agreement, that condition, that financial status cannot change without 2/3 of district superintendents agreeing to go in that direction. And that's a really important element that goes to the final component of the changes, which is when you have a governing board, that's one school board member from each district that comes together at most once a month to have conversations. What you're lacking consistently is, are these decisions in the best interest? Are they not in the best interest? How does this impact my individual district and so on and so forth? And that's because typically when local decisions are being made, the district superintendent is there, it's sharing feedback along with the special ed director, but the structure lacked a lot of that clarity, lack of input. And so ultimately the organization will be transitioning from being heavily run by a large group of representative school board members to that group will still exist just to ratify things, but most of the decisions will be made by a group of superintendents, one from every district, that will be meeting almost monthly to make sure that everything's in line in True North like we would expect it to be in alignment at the local district. And so that's kind of a little overview. Dr. Steinberg ultimately serves as the school district's representative to what's referred to as the governing board. And so he'll be presented this information tomorrow, along with a few other things. Assuming that everything goes as we anticipate, there will be a special meeting at the beginning of November where the governing board will approve the bylaws. And then in January 1st, this new structure, this new design will be fully in effect. And I would serve as the district's representative for that new executive committee. Really important elements. Doing this work has resulted in a transition of at least 15 districts that had indicated their intent to withdraw from True North. Now saying, if these changes are made, which are responsive to all of the feedback that's been shared for quite some time, then they're not going to withdraw because there is great value in providing that service. So that naturally leads to, what about Glenbrook? While we do not have the need to leverage True North for services today because we have built tremendous capacity in our own programs, having the flexibility and access to True North is a direct benefit to our students for what we don't know today or tomorrow. And if that access is provided at no cost to the district, and the district still has the ability to leave the cooperative later on if we wanted, because there's also a new law that we assisted in drafting that takes away this confusion if other districts have to approve if you can leave, then there's no downfall in remaining a member of True North. And I would say that our efforts to help, especially from a financial side, bring about a strong foundation for the cooperative, us staying in, I think would be very meaningful to the organization, showing that we were always interested in having these hard conversations. Prior to Dr. Steinberg, Mr. Dowdy, Mr. O'Hara, and Mr. Crockett, you had attended some of True North meetings, didn't you, before? We had been bringing up these concerns for at least 3 years, and they would be brought up, the vote would happen, we would vote one way, and everyone else would vote the other way. So we've come a long way, and it's very exciting to see where we're at. But once these article agreements are approved, I likely will bring forward a recommendation to remain a member of True North. Again, because there is no financial detriment. There's only benefit. And I will have a piece of paper that shows there is no financial consequence. I just need that paper first. So happy to answer any questions before I go on to the next portions of the report about True North. We've talked about this in many different phases, but I want to provide a little opportunity.
When would the effective date be in terms of our fees and when we stop paying?
We stop
Provided this goes through
at the end of the fiscal year.
of this year.
So, yep, so July, it's very important, Madam Treasurer. On July 1st, we would not have to maintain that membership fee allocation in the budget because you would no longer be paying it.
Thank you.
So we started, or we were in the middle of a legal proceeding. What's going to be the status of that?
Yeah, so what would ultimately happen if we remained a member is I'd present a resolution to the board to rescind our notice to withdrawal, and then the proceeding would end. The proceeding has not moved forward because, to be very candid, so many districts were going to be going through that proceeding, and the North Cook ISC said, why don't we hold for a moment to see what's going to happen? A great question. Any other questions on True North? Okay. This is now a very exciting moment because for the very first time as a superintendent, I get to take an opportunity to recognize some amazing individuals. If you're not aware, every October is National Principals Month. And in the state of Illinois, October 19th through 25th is Principals Week. And on October 24th, we officially celebrate Principals Day. Right? At the federal and state level, we have all come together. And so with that said,
More than I get.
I just want to take an opportunity to acknowledge that the heart of a school are our staff, our teachers, our support staff, the individuals who we contract out with, making sure our students get to school safe through our transportation services, the recognition of all the individuals who may not work full-time here, but come in order to embrace and support the 4As, especially activities and athletics. There are amazing people that make school life happen for our 5,100 students each and every day. But there are individuals that really serve as that glue that bring us all together. And those are not only our principals, Dr. Georges and Mrs. Hughes, but our associate principals and our assistant principals. These individuals are oftentimes on the front lines assisting not only our students, but their families through difficult times, through hard conversations, and really working strategically to make sure every student, regardless of what pathway they choose, is able to reach their destination following their high school experience. And so as we celebrate National Principals Month, recognizing the role that they provide in not only supporting our students, our families, but overall communities, on behalf of the district as a whole, I want to say thank you to all of you. And the individuals that you see up here, I'm going to take a moment to make sure I recognize all of them. In case you don't recognize faces, I'll go left to right. We have Dr. Georges, principal at Glenbrook South, Mrs. Hughes, principal at Glenbrook North, Mrs. Barger, our assistant principal of Deans over at Glenbrook North, Mr. Bean, our assistant principal of Deans over at Glenbrook South. These are alphabetical, by the way, moving forward. Mrs. Bonner, our associate principal of Operations and Student Experiences at Glenbrook North, Ms. Araceli Conchola, our associate principal of Student Support over at Glenbrook South, Ms. Rebecca Holst, our assistant principal of Student Services over at Glenbrook South, Dr. Joyce Kim, our associate principal of Teaching and Learning at Glenbrook South, Ms. Jennifer Korber, our associate principal of Student Support at Glenbrook North, Dr. Mark Maranto, our assistant principal of Student Activities at Glenbrook South, Mr. Tommy Meadis, our assistant principal of Athletics at Glenbrook South, Ms. Dr. Lauren O'Malley, our assistant principal of Student Services at Glenbrook North, Dr. Mike Tarjan, assistant principal of Student Activities at Glenbrook South, Mrs. Molly Tomlinson, assistant principal of Athletics at Glenbrook North, Dr. Maria Vasilopoulos, Associate Principal of Teaching and Learning at Glenbrook North, and Mr. Casey Wright, Associate Principal at Glenbrook South of Operations and Student Experiences. That is a large amount of names. I wanted to make sure I recognize each and every one of them because they are part of this glue. They are part of the fabric that makes so much happen in our schools. And while not all of them are here today, perhaps they are sitting at home watching because this is a very exciting opportunity for them. Can I ask everyone here to give them a round of applause for their work? Thank you to our principals for everything that they do. Final comment today. I had shared through our board updates a PDF of this booklet right here. I'm sorry I don't have a booklet for everyone, but if you'd like one, I would happily lend you mine. This is the Illinois Association of School Boards Resolution Committee report. Each year, the IASB at the joint annual conference, which I'm very excited that I'm going to see so many of you at this year, brings together a group called the Delegate Assembly. It happens on the Saturday of the conference. And typically, there's a variety of position statements that the organization puts forward. And to be candid, some of those position statements need a little dialogue at local boards because sometimes they're controversial, sometimes they apply to some districts, but not all, so on and so forth. This year, there's only one. And it's really not a controversial one. It's all about an unfunded mandate that should be funded. But there are a large amount of constitutional amendments to the not-for-profit organization's constitution. We have two representatives that will have some influence here. One, first is Mr. Glowacki, who is part of the North Cook Regional Group. They have a meeting on October 22nd where they'll talk as a region just about these changes in here, kind of process them through and oftentimes the regional groups might identify an individual that will speak during the assembly on behalf of the region. Second, Ms. Mullenbeck serves as our official representative or official delegate in the assembly. So she will actually cast our vote. And so we will review all of these proposals at the next board meeting, have a little dialogue, but I just want to encourage you, please take an opportunity to review this. If you have immediate questions, maybe share them with Mr. Glowacki since he'll be at the regional group as well as Ms. Mullenbeck, and then we can talk about them all together. All right, very exciting time. With that said, I have concluded my report and I'm happy to transition, I believe, Mrs. Bonner, who is representing Glenbrook North this evening.
Yes, I am. Thank you. So first, we want to congratulate our flag football team. We had a great season, and what's amazing, it's only in its second season, our flag football team, and we rostered 3 levels of athletes, which is really exciting. So thank you to Coach Haggis and Coach Sweeney for a great season. Also, congratulations to our boys golf team individual qualifier, Alex Lee. He placed 13th in the state overall at the state tournament. And so a big thank you to coaches Justin Gerbich and Pam Harnick for that great season. Our girls golf team saw some amazing success this weekend at the IHSA state tournament. They are state champs for the 3rd year in a row. Each of the girls performed amazingly well, with Martha Kuwahara entering 2nd place overall, earning 2nd place. So thanks to coaches Mike Schroeder and Chris Cooper for that great season. And thank you to the Northbrook Police Department for their support with the police escort back to school on Saturday night. I'll turn it over to Principal Georges.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bonner. We just had an absolutely phenomenal week at Glenbrook South with homecoming. The BAT team at South just debriefed it today, and we were all in awe on a couple things. First is we're seeing a bounce back in our student Titan Pride. We're seeing an increase in the amount of students participating in homecoming activities, and it was just a really feel-good week. So our theme this year was Game On, which was a really exciting theme for our students related to board games and video games and a lot of good childhood memories and favorites. We had activities throughout the week related to competitions and trivia, door decorating contests, a lot of fun in the building. On Friday night, we had a fantastic football game where we beat Deerfield 42-0. And then we got to enjoy fireworks and celebration afterwards. For those of you who were with us Saturday morning, we had a lovely, lovely community parade. We're one of the few high schools that still does our parade in our downtown area of Glenview. We had a huge community turnout for beautiful weather where we had 30 student groups that marched with either their banners or, as you can see, some of the absolutely awesome floats. This was our senior class, and the theme of their float was the game Clue. And that center area actually spun like a hidden bookcase. It was amazing the work our students did on their floats. And then finally, Saturday night, we had 2,000 students at our homecoming dance. Everything was packed. The dome was packed. The taco food truck had a line. I mean, it was a glorious, wonderful, and fun evening. And as I shared with Dr. Marianto, my favorite part was that the kids kept coming. It was apparent kids were texting their friends saying, "This is really fun, come on out." And even though they weren't necessarily in a suit, they put on their best dress shirt and they came out. And it was a wonderful, wonderful event. So shout out to our SAO and all our class sponsors and all of our chaperones and club advisors. It was an absolutely amazing evening. In terms of athletics at GBS, you're going to have to bear with my distraction this evening. Our girls flag football team did win regionals. We are currently competing in sectional finals. The game is going as we speak. There's 3 minutes and 28 seconds back. We were down, but we just had 2 touchdowns. Quote from AD Tom Meadis, "This is unbelievable." It is an amazing game, so I'm gonna keep tabs on it. But super proud of our young ladies, and hopefully they will win in the next 3 minutes. In addition, we had some great performances at golf as well. We had 2 state qualifiers this past weekend. Lara Konahali, who is only a freshman for the girls, and Tad Collette for the boys, who finished 13th overall. So super proud of our athletic programs as we approach the end of the fall season. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. That sounds like a great week, and congratulations to our students on all of their tremendous success. That moves on to a report from the board from the Facilities Committee. Do we have someone from the Facilities Committee who would like to share?
I do believe Mr. Downing has
There-
volunteered for that
Mr.
opportunity.
Downing.
I lost the knotted game. So we actually had a really good meeting. We talked about the recommended capital projects that need to be taken care of in the next year. Not to go too deep into it, but things around updating the bathrooms, elevators, roof repair, chiller maintenance. You'll see it come out in a memo, but we're kind of have to tweak it because for safety reasons, we don't want to put the whole school map out there. So, and it'll be brought up at the next board meeting, but it was productive. We also touched on the master facility plan going into the kind of a 10-year vision. And it was kind of based around a lot of security and safety and things like program enhancement. You know, some culinary kitchens are pretty outdated, and we have a lot of kids that, you know, might be pursuing that after high school, and modernizing of cafeterias and modernizing of departmental areas, as well as our athletics, all around safety and modernization. But that'll come up at the next facility meeting, so we don't have to, you know, will not be brought up at the next board meeting.
Okay.
Questions?
So much, Mr. Downing.
No.
That then, does any other board member have any reports they'd like to share?
I can just briefly, I guess, parent associations have been very active over the last few weeks, both south and north, along with the booster clubs and stuff. So it's been some of my colleagues who have at some of the meetings and stuff. And so they're very enthusiastic with the school season starting up, with them getting involved. And I know one was on the career and college preparedness, which was interesting stats to be shared. I know we're waiting to get some from South as well too, to compare the two and everything, but we have a lot of kids going on to college. Despite our focus on trying to be more broader, there's still a heavy focus on college readiness. with that and everything. What can we do for that? But at the same time, I know this board's always been supportive in the past of trying to find more resources to help these children find a path, and looking forward to more conversations on that front.
Excellent. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is recognition of community visitors. And we do have one person who is signed up to speak tonight. Our public comment period is up to a 30-minute period for public participation. Each individual may speak to the board for up to 2 minutes. We ask but do not require that each speaker state their name, address, and relationship to the district to facilitate follow-up if needed. All speakers are expected to conduct themselves with respect and civility towards others. Please remember that this is a business meeting of the board. All comments should be addressed to the board and should concern board business. The board receives public comments as a source of information and considers them in making decisions and in the establishment of policies. It is board practice to take no action on any items nor to discuss any items that members of the public have raised until the board has had time to gather information and then objectively discuss available options. However, during the meeting, the board, at its discretion, may choose to address an issue or correct any misinformation raised during public comment. While the board does not control the topics brought to its attention or the substance of public comment, speakers are reminded that their comments are not automatically protected by any immunity or other legal protection. With that, our speaker tonight, who's come to join us, is Sarah Weil.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to address you. What I wanted to talk about tonight was the application for student clubs that was announced at the last board meeting. And particularly what I understand, and let me put a caveat that my understanding is based on talking to my student and other students. And so you will be well aware if I'm misinformed and take that into consideration. My understanding is that previously we did not allow political clubs to be approved in the district. And I noticed in the application that that is a category that is being included for this application process. It's possible that many other categories have also been added because I have not seen prior application processes in the past. My understanding is that there have been students that have been aggrieved by not having their clubs approved on political bases. I know one of those clubs was like a gun safety club that some students wanted to form after the Highland Park shooting. And I also know that there was an incident some weeks ago where students were aggrieved that their club was not approved, and that ended up in some incitement to violence that then led to an announcement to the district community, which led me to come 2 weeks ago to talk about student safety in the classroom. So all of that brings me around to my reaction on seeing that political clubs were in scope was initially uncharitable and thinking that maybe the board was appeasing the incitement to violence and seeking to de-escalate it by allowing it. On reflection, I realized that that is not at all consistent with what this board and this district does. And I do think that the expansion of clubs is a really good thing because we want to, encourage our students to, I don't have the timer, so let me know if I go too long. We want to encourage our students to expand their involvement and their advocacy. But I would ask that we have a little more clarity on the criteria and maybe a little more transparency to who's applying, who's approved, and who's denied, so that we can understand what's really going on. Again, we hear things from students, and it's hard to know if they're true or not. But that's really my request. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Weil. The next item on our agenda is item 5, our consent agenda. Dr. Gravel, have there been any changes to the consent agenda?
There have been no changes. We did upload an updated personnel report earlier this afternoon, so that's the only note.
Okay. In that case, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
That motion.
Second.
Mr. Downing,
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Mrs. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Schein,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes,
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We move on now to our discussion action agenda. And the first item on our agenda is our presentation on supporting students' mental health and well-being.
So this is one of the topics that some board members had brought forward as an important topic that not only the board have an opportunity to learn about, but our entire community. We know that from our prior conversation a few meetings ago, that student safety is paramount. It's a focus that all of our educators, all of our administrators, all of our staff think about each and every day. We're always looking at ways to make sure that our buildings are secure, that we have procedures in place should any emergency happen. But so too are we consistently monitoring and aware that our students have other needs. And sometimes those needs are best encompassed with terms such as mental health and well-being. This evening, we're very excited to welcome Dr. Laura Cummings, our Assistant Superintendent, as well as our two Assistant Principals of Student Services, Dr. Lauren O'Malley and Ms. Rebecca Holst, who will be sharing perspectives and activities that go on each and every day at our schools. I hope that the board has had an opportunity to review the memo. I hope that the entire community takes an opportunity to pause and reflect not on what you hear today, but what we've written down here. Because there are a lot of great things that we're doing each and every day for our students, and that list is ever expanding. And to that, as I turn it over to Dr. Cummings, one of the things that we recognize is so very important is that we pause ourselves for a moment and reflect. And so as you are guided through the next activity, I encourage everyone in the room here today to participate, share your thoughts, and understand why it's important to pause, reflect on how you're doing, and also letting trusted adults and educators know how you're doing so that we can help you even more. Dr. Cummings.
Great. Thank you. All right. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for us to come speak with you. A couple weeks ago, Mr. Joel Reyes was here to talk about the physical safety in the district. And tonight we're here to talk with you more about the social, emotional, and well-being. The district remains committed to student wellness and well-being. Tonight's presentation is going to highlight some of the proactive measures and things that happen on a daily basis within the Student Services Department to ensure that our students are seen, supported, and safe throughout their days in the school. So for those of you who were at the board meeting with our colorful popsicle sticks, which was a fun activity, I know a couple of you missed it, so you're going to get another colorful activity. Tonight, we're going to take a look at the mood meter, which I placed in front of you. And this is a tool from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, Mark Brackett. And what it does is help build awareness of your emotions. It's very important when we start to work with students that we are helping them to identify their emotions so that we can teach them the skills should they want to move to different brackets. And we're going to show you about that today. Right now, some of our clinicians and our teachers within the PE health department are utilizing the mood meter and different modules within the ruler to help students identify their emotions, because we know the more they understand and can identify and understand their emotions, they can start to make the connection on how emotions impact their thinking and their behaviors. So in front of you, you have a mood meter. On the screen, you have a QR code or a website. What I'd like you to do is take a moment, think about where you are at in this moment and how you are feeling. The sheet you have in front of you gives you a variety of different words. It's no longer about being happy or sad, but really truly identifying that specific emotion that you're feeling. There's no right or wrong here. Just like we were with the popsicle sticks, no right or wrong. Every emotion is good. It's really how you utilize it and how you have the skills. So feel free to either take out your phone and scan the QR code, or you can enter in the web address and complete the mood meter for yourself. It is anonymous, so no one is going to know whose results are whose unless you want to share, but I'm not going to ask you to. Anyone can participate in the audience too. Yeah, oh yeah. Nice. Well done.
Students, you could use this as a screenshot for your evidence of being here today.
Oh, yeah.
We do selfies too.
Cabinet members, you can also feel free to join if you'd like to plot where you're at right now. I know there are a lot of words. It's a lot.
Must be so much-
Laura, while they're doing that, do you want to just talk about the quadrants that exist?
Absolutely. So again, there's no right or wrong in terms of how you're feeling, right? It's about you and how you're feeling. There actually is an app that goes along with this. I get reminded like 12 times a day that I need to enter my mood. Mr. Breetag probably enters his 12 times a day. I do not. I should, but it is so cool to start tracking how you're feeling given different situations, like whether you're painting or coloring, or you're in a meeting, or you're at work, how you move through the various quadrants, your unpleasantness to pleasantness, as you move to the right, and how you're feeling, and being able to document what you're doing in that moment when you were feeling those things. Okay, you ready for some results? Oh, yeah. Okay. So. So one of the things I gave you, on the back side of your mood meter, these are some of the skills that we work on. Oops, I forgot about the microphone. I like to walk.
Walk with them.
Oh, I won't. I'm gonna stay right here. So these are some of the very specific skills that we use with students. So let's just say you're that one individual in the red. I don't know who you are, and that's okay. But if you are feeling irritated, frustrated, angry, stressed, now might be a good time to write a persuasive argument, advocate for something you believe in. So it gives you different strategies. Sometimes it's okay to be in the red when you are, advocating for rights or with customer service on the phone or things like that. It's okay to be in the red, right? But sometimes in order to be available for some of the learning or a meeting that you're in or a conversation, you want to try different activities that you can so that you can move throughout. So this is just a little helpful sheet to teach you some of the skills that we work on with our students. It's a work in progress. Okay, we can go back. I am happy to also pass along the QR code for the app should you want to start kind of tracking your lives or your days. So, all right, I am going to pass it on to Lauren O'Malley and Rebecca Holst to kind of walk us through a typical day in student services, and I'll be back towards the end.
Awesome. Hi, good evening. I'm Lauren O'Malley. I'm the AP for Student Services at GBN. And I'm going to share a little bit about our student support teams that we have across the buildings in the district. And really a student support team, or we call them SSTs, are really focused on intervention planning and support students. And every student has a student support team at both of the schools. And really at its core, SSTs consist of a school counselor, school psychologist, a school social worker, and a dean. So really multidisciplinary group of people who come together and really kind of focus on three different areas, evidenced on the screen. Number one, proactively identifying student needs. So SSTs meet on a weekly, if not more frequent basis, to look at data that we have on students and hopefully have early indications of where students might be struggling and need additional support. So specifically, we might look at attendance data, discipline data, academic and grade data, and social emotional data to support students. Based on that information and that teaming process, we start to talk about providing individualized support for students. So determining the support plan based on what the student needs, triangulating the data that we have about a student, and really pulling in the right people to be part of those conversations to support students and identify the supports that they are going to need to find short-term and long-term success. And then we do a lot of cross-functional collaboration. So I talked about those like core members of the team who I think we pull together in crisis and in preventative planning. And then we also do a lot of collaborative teaming with our school nurse, 504 coordinator, MTSS coordinator, home hospital coordinator, teachers, case managers, administrators, including those in student services, but also administrators across the academic departments, depending on what that particular student need is going to look like. We invite them to come to SSTs or perhaps to join a PST structure, a problem-solving team, where we talk about issues that students are having that are maybe not immediately solved, that require some cross collaboration across departments and different members of student services in the academic departments. So the student support team is like a really just comprehensive way to support students and identify what it is they need. On the next slide, when we think about like the data that we utilize to run our SSTs and think about early warning indicators and preventative measures that we can put into place, one tool that we utilize as a Tier 1 universal screener for all students is the Panorama SEL Benchmark Survey, something that's administered 3 times across the year, most recently administered in October, which yields a lot of data around SEL that our student services departments or student support division utilizes to support students. For today, we kind of like highlighted 3 areas for you all, though we have a lot more data than this. One area that we have seen just like consistent positive response from students on is supportive relationships. So if we think about the past year, students are pretty highly and pretty consistently reporting that they have trusted adults and peers in the building and that they report that they have supportive relationships in the building. So I think this is like an area of celebration that we have, we have great community of, teachers and support staff and family community, and students are really feeling that and recognizing that. So I think that's important to share with you all and to share with the community that students are identifying this. We also have data on sense of belonging. So this is an area where a few years ago, we noticed that there was perhaps a lower than desired number of students who were reporting that they were feeling a sense of belonging in the buildings across the district. And this has been a really targeted area of both schools, or across the district, I should say, on sense of belonging. I think we can see from 2022 up until our most recent administration of the SEL benchmark survey, a pretty steady increase in students reporting that they feel like they belong in their school community and that they have, a home and, a group of people in the building that they feel very connected to and like their school is for them. So I think this is some great work that's happening in the buildings. And so I think we sort of like see evidence of that work come through in our SEL benchmark survey. And then we can identify an area where students are not reporting, I think, as desirable strengths, which is on growth mindset. So we have, fewer students than desired who are reporting that they feel like they can sort of grow and with effort can improve over time. And so I think that, as we look at our data, we think about individual student data, but we think about school-wide data and areas where we can see some room for growth as a school. And so like one area that I can think about as we like respond to growth mindset are high yield practices that we're working on across the school community, both in student services and in our academic departments, to really focus on those like SEL instructional strategies in the classroom to help maybe progress some students in the way that they think about themselves and their own individual like growth and pursuit, both, academically and personally. In addition to the SEL benchmark data that we have as like a universal screener, we also we do the Signs of Suicide curriculum in our 9th grade PE classes. All 9th grade students have push-in services in their PE classes to engage in an evidence-based suicide prevention program that helps students to identify early warning signs of suicide. And we have clinical teams and counseling teams who respond to students' survey responses immediately and in the days to follow based on what they indicate in the Signs of Suicide curriculum. And some evidence suggests that through this program, there's a 64% reduction in suicide attempts for students across the nation. And it's our belief in our district that this program does save lives and really helps us find and identify students that have not otherwise been on our radar. And so we regularly are surprised sometimes by some of the responses that we see. So we find this a very valuable and worthwhile programming that we do as a, tier one universal way to like understand where students are at. The value of doing it at ninth grade is, students they've just come to us. So we're just learning who they are. And we do this in the fall of of the ninth grade year. So these are just like a couple of examples of some of the universal ways that we collect data about students, some of the structures that we utilize in our SSTs more preventatively. And I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca Holst, who's going to talk about some of like the day-to-day operations when we can't necessarily prevent, but we're like in the moment about some crises that like emerge and occur on the day-to-day basis in our department. So I'll pass it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Lauren. As Lauren said, sometimes we're not preventing, and we are managing the situation live. And this is where all of what was just said kind of comes to fruition. When we do have to talk to a student that might have thoughts of harming themselves, if you look at your mood meter, those are the vocabulary words that we're looking and trying to tease out from the student. How are they really feeling at that moment? Can they put a description to their emotions? Or are they all over the place? Or can they not find the vocabulary? And that's a skill we try to learn. But really specifically in that moment, we hand our clinicians some protocols to make sure that they're on the same page, that they're asking very, very similar, simple questions to the student so that we can gauge the risk. Once we gauge the risk, then we can really partner with the family and get any outside support that is needed. So if you look at the screen, you'll see some of the questions that the Columbia model, that's what we call it, the Columbia protocol, asks. Whether or when they've had kind of thoughts of suicide, which is called ideation. What actions have they taken to prepare? Have they done research? And this is really heavy material for a clinician. We tend to always team these scenarios, and it can take hours to go through this. You can't just have a student come in your office and jump right into these questions. You have to build some rapport. It might be a student you've never met. It might be a student you have a long history with. Regardless, you have to make sure that there's trust and rapport there before you can ask these questions. So our clinicians are incredibly skilled, and they do work through this all the time. When they're going through it, they're asking these questions. Somebody is most times is taking notes, and then they're going to debrief it, especially in this last one, whether or when that they have attempted suicide. That's a really key question that they need to know to plan for the future. Often it is, this is where Lauren and I come in, where we also are debriefing with the team afterwards. It's not at 3:15, this is done. It's not out of their brain. This is heavy stuff that they absolutely go home with. And they have to tease out this information. And sometimes they have to share really crucial details with the family, with the guardians who may or may not have any idea. This is what we categorize as harm to self, and they're gauging that risk. This is what we do coming out of the signs of suicide, out of that data. They're meeting with kids at Glenbrook South. We did signs of suicide last week, so we're really working through our students this week. Then sometimes we're talking about harm to others, and that is what we call a threat assessment. We use what is called the Behavior Digital Threat Assessment. This is what we have registered with the state as our threat assessment tool. And it's a 3-step process. The first step is the screening step. And again, it goes back to those words. Are students just reacting emotionally with a hand gesture, with a doodle, with an oral or verbal phrase? Are they writing something? Are they just being a little high schooly, right? A little flippant, a little unfiltered, in a little maybe robust in their vocabulary. And we have to tease that out. What's just a flippant statement, and what is very, very, very significant and important. And we have to tease that out. And this again is complicated and can take hours, but this model walks everybody through it. So again, they're teaming with this. It is a team. When we realize we have a threat assessment, I mean, it is often that I will walk out of a meeting because I have to go meet with the team and just get everybody on the same page so that we are following all the steps. That is absolutely best practice, and we want to make sure that that's being followed. We'll do the screening. Again, it's teamed, and then we come back and we debrief and we make sure, are we comfortable just ending at the screening, calling home, creating some interventions for the next week? Or do we need to go to the comprehensive model and really conduct some interviews, make sure that we're interviewing the family, the teachers, the student, really diving into a little bit more of the student's portfolio? And then, depending on what we find, what interventions do we need to take place? And then again, that's always followed up with a debrief. So these two things happen within the building. It's not often that other people are aware because it is in the office, and it is always teamed. We make sure that there's always more than one person in the room, and that the student is absolutely cared for in that time, and that it is followed up with parent-guardian communication. And often we ask the parent to come into the building, so those can be face-to-face conversations. We get this information from a variety of places, and that's really important to know. Some of it is signs of suicide in that programming that we do. Some of it is a teacher's grading a paper and they see a doodle. Some of it is the teacher's walking around the classroom and they see something on the desk. Others, it is some of our reporting systems and our community partnerships. So we partner with Text for Help, which was previously Text a Tip, and Safe to Help, which is an Illinois, a free Illinois tool for all schools. But these really allow for immediate reporting. Text a Tip will just contact an adult related to the school immediately when this comes in. They have our cell numbers. They either call us or text us. And the top presenting problems are going to be social media. That's number one. What did somebody put out there that we need to dig into? Or they're calling and they're just saying, I know this about somebody else. It could be that they're just worried about a friend or that they know something happened. Somebody could call on themselves, that they just have tremendous anxiety and they need support. And we will make sure, no matter what category that is on here, we will get them that support either immediately or the next day, depending on what time we learn about it. If you look at the bottom of that slide, we've been partnering with Text for Help / Text a Tip since 2017. Over 3,000 conversations have taken place, and we do have a lot of data. We do know that a majority of our data, we get it on Thursdays between 12 and 6 p.m. So it's interesting how it comes through, when it comes through. There's an ebb and a flow to that. And sometimes it's interesting to look at the data to predict some trends, predict some topics, and then we're always surprised. The next one that we have is just our anonymous internal concern forms that students can fill out. Both schools have this. All of these resources are on our webpage. And that's just some interesting data. We have seen a spike in the reporting, and that goes back to those supporting relationships that Lauren was talking about. The more supportive relationships, the increased sense of belonging, the more we're going to learn, the busier student services is going to be, and that's for the benefit of everybody. So year to date, right now, as a district, we've had 60 submissions, and we'll just continue to track this data. It is on all the time. Laura, Laura's going to talk a little bit more about our community relationships.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously you've heard about a lot of the meetings we have, a lot of the planning, the teaming, the collaboration, but we also do provide direct services. A lot of the work of the social workers and psychologists are providing direct interventions to students. And so I couldn't possibly list all of them of the different interventions, but I just wanted to highlight a couple that I have on here. We provide counseling, no surprise, right? We provide individual and group counseling. Typically it is for skill building or solution focused. Our social workers provide counseling, our psychologists provide it, and our counselors provide counseling as well. Group counseling is typically based on a need that arises, that multiple students have a similar need that we will then create a curriculum for. We provide homebound tutoring, sometimes one for students who qualify and require homebound tutoring, but also for additional support and services depending on a situation with the student. We have several research-based interventions. I just listed 2 of them that are probably our top 2 favorite ones for the student services members. One is called Check and Connect, and it's a way to check in with the student on a daily basis and be able to set goals. And check in and check out is for those students who need someone to check in with to get their day started and to check out with at the end of the day. So those are just 2 of the ones. I would say the most valuable and important on this list is our relationship with parents, guardians, and families. It's really important once we start to identify concerns that we are reaching out to families and they are part of our team. I know we didn't include that on the SST, like as part of our team, but we do invite them to come in to meet with us. They know their kids the best and they can help, reinforce and help us structure interventions that the students are going to be successful. I'm hopeful if you'll have me, I'd like to come back again another night and talk with you about our personalized learning plans of all freshman parents being invited into buildings at both South and North, meeting with the counselor, meeting with the student, and talking about their goals and their courses for 4 years. And what a benefit it is to be able to start a relationship with a parent, a family, a guardian on a positive note and an introduction to the high school. And then when you have to make that call later on about a concern or about a health and safety, it's that much easier to have that conversation. So I'm really excited about that taking place next month. And then the last thing I just want to mention are our community partnerships. We have so many. Again, I couldn't list them all here, but I just thought it would be really important for you to know how we partner with our community. As you know, we have the health center with Advocate Health. So we're partnering with them to provide, we have a licensed clinical social worker there full-time, spends a day at North, 4 days at South right now. They came in and provided that lunch and learn I talked about. We work with Family Service Center quite extensively. They do help provide, when we are doing the SOS screening and curriculum, they provide therapists to help the teams with those assessments. And should we have a crisis situation or need additional grief counseling, they will always volunteer to come support. Same with Youth Services and Compass, again, another resource for us. They typically have helped provide safety assessments for us. So we might do a safety assessment that we just previously talked about, and we want another set of eyes, another clinician to interview and meet with the student to help us plan. And so oftentimes Youth Services and Compass will help us with that. Catch and Glenview Northbrook Coalition for Youth, they actually partnered together to provide mental health coping kits for all of our freshman students. So both South and North got enough kits for every student. And during that SOS curriculum time or orientation, they received those coping kits through that organization. And then the Jocelyn Center that has provided us with mental health first aid training for staff, for students, and recently has provided for security and our instructional assistants, and then also some psychiatric support. Again, not comprehensive, but we are incredibly fortunate to be in a community that values mental health and well-being and is willing to partner with the school district. That's it. That's it. So, any questions? One of the 3 of us would be happy to.
Mr. Glowacki?
Sure. So I know we've had some tragic situations over the last few years and stuff, and it's kind of unique. Any lessons learned that would help us in the future? How have we incorporated that and changed early warning indicators or anything else? And I guess this is also for you as well, to give it the system has some of those triggers.
Absolutely. I'm good. Okay. Sure. Okay. So what I would say is after every crisis, so whether it's a threat assessment that we've done that we found a weapon or something concerning like that, or a grief situation, a crisis situation in the community, the team does come together to do an after action and debrief, right? As you could imagine, being a clinician, my background is as a psychologist, like of course, the first question we're going to ask is, did I miss something, right? Like, did we miss something? And so we do a deep dive into students' records to see like, what are those warning signs? I know I can't give you a number standing here, but I know we have saved so many lives with our reporting systems, with SOS. And sometimes, unfortunately, there aren't those warning signs for the school to be aware of. But what I would say is I think we continue to grow and evolve and use additional data points that we've never used before. So now that we have all this SEL data in and of itself, you're not going to really find anything in there. But we use a system called Panorama. Once you use that to be able to look at the whole picture of a student, you learn a lot.
So you incorporate that regularly after each instance and stuff. Why Thursdays? What is your,
Yeah, good
I was
question.
gonna, given that it's been now a few years, I'm sure
Yeah.
you have some thoughts on it.
I don't know if I do, but I was surprised, like going through the data, we have a dashboard and so you can look each year. Tuesday is a close second, but Thursdays was our most popular night of getting texts. And just to clarify, so you all are aware, students can reach out to those text-to-tip services and communicate back and forth with a licensed therapist, right? The school district only finds out about it if a specific name is given and a specific concern is given. Otherwise, we get the report, the summary report of like the different topics that came, but we get zero student information unless a specific name is given. And those places will also reach out directly to the police if
I
there's
was just
something
wondering if there's a
concerning.
correlation going into the weekends or something
Yeah.
else that you guys are expecting with social issues.
You know, I think it's hard. I think it's like it's a guess and it's hard to like postulate on that. I would like suspect or surmise that like as the week progresses, I think, you know, social interactions increase as students are together. I think that workload increases. I think we see assessments on Fridays. And so I would suspect that like some of those like anxieties and tensions might rise as the week progresses, sort of like leading into maybe like some type of release that students feel as like Friday rolls around and we move into the weekend. Just like another fun fact on the data, I know not presented here, but presented before, is that October, we see the highest number of text-to-tips come through historically. I didn't look at our most recent data, but historically that's been the case. And I think, you know, even in student services now, I think we can kind of like feel the pulse. You know, the school year is up and running. Not that October is the Thursday of the months, but I think that, you know, we are through the first, you know, couple of weeks of the school year. The students are up and running in their courses. Extracurriculars are up and running. We're into sports seasons. So I think that maybe students are beginning to sort of like feel some of those pressures that emerge. And so I know as a student services department, we are aware of that and in tune with that. And it's really for us some comforting timing to have administered the SEL Panorama benchmark data that we do go through, sort of concurrent with some of these like increases that we see in student responses. So I don't really know about the Thursday, but that's my
Thank you. I
best
appreciate it.
guess.
And my final question, from the board, what could the board do to make your jobs easier? And maybe another variant of this question would be, or what barriers can we help remove within our scope and stuff? And I know this is putting you on the spot in front of your boss.
You should say anything you feel is best to support our kids.
Like I don't want to like usurp the time. I think that we are, and like we regularly talk about this, we are incredibly lucky to have the support services that we do in the Glenbrooks. I think that it is just the number of like psychs and social workers, counselors, support staff that we have is really incredible. And it's because of that we're able to do a lot of the work that we do. So I think having an opportunity to come and speak here, I don't know how like robust our audience is online, but I think being able to share what we do is really helpful because without the opportunity to communicate with families and communicate with you all, that there really is a lot of work that's happening on a day-to-day basis to support students' mental health and well-being. You know, perhaps like a narrative can exist about like supports that do or do not actually take place in the building. So I think just having opportunities to be able to share what we do, sort of celebrate the work that clinical and counseling teams and other student support teams are doing in the buildings is very helpful, because I know that the people in the buildings care very much about the work they do. They care a lot about kids and invest a lot of time, and experience a lot of compassion fatigue every day. We sort of like see it as the day winds down. So I think just creating opportunities to be able to share what we do does reduce some barriers, because a lot of the work is happening, but I think if it's not maybe like internalized at large, some of those maybe like ideas and sentiments go unnoticed. So I think we probably really value the opportunity to be able to share. So I was excited to tell my team that I was coming here today to share with you all some of the things that really they're doing. Just my take.
I think one of the unique things that I've experienced in my last just year and a half at South is our language liaisons are invaluable. We have to sometimes do these health and safety assessments, these threat assessments by way of a language liaison. And one that's incredibly difficult. They don't know what they're walking into. That's a lot for them to hear and to take on and to have to communicate. But they drop everything. And that's really, really important. So one, just thank you for allowing us to have that. And thank you to them for being just so great and always putting students forward first. And then I think we just always need training. We have to stay current. We have to stay on the forefront of everything that's happening. Especially when it's safety assessments, threat assessments, just always, we have to be in the know. That's really important. I think Ryan talks a lot about anchor grading, and we talk a lot about that when it comes to just evaluations. We need to also anchor grade threat assessments, health and safety assessments to make sure our reaction and what we would do in our step-by-step is the same. Our students that are experiencing that need that from us, but the safety of all the students in the Glenbrook need that from us as well. And that just consistency with the adults is really, really important.
Well, thank you to you and your teams for everything you do. So appreciate that.
Mr. Downing?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you. No question, you've saved lives. And I know you can't point to it, but we all know. And so, thank you. And all your team, please pass it down for me. Is there, just follow up on his Thursdays, that was just weird, right? So is there a specific, is it more self-harm tips that come in, or is it reporting on somebody else? Do you know what the typical tip would be?
It's reporting on somebody else, for sure.
Oh, it is, okay.
I think, and it could be just, I'm worried about my friend, so-and-so, please make sure that person gets help.
Yeah, I mean, I do think.
I'm like thinking about, I need to call my kids at Thursday at between noon and 6 every year,
It's a
every
good
day,
time
every
to check
week.
in with them. Yes. I do think the buildings have spent quite a bit of time talking about see something, say something. I think they've also anchored their values in the Titan values and the Spartan Class Act and really talked through about how we have to care for each other. And so it is unbelievable
That's
what
great.
gets submitted on there. Like sometimes you read and you're like, no way. Like, could this really, and it happened. Like 1 out of like 100, you go, okay, maybe that person was just trying to get some attention, but 99% of the time, like it is absolutely true. They are deeply concerned. They see it on social media before any of us see it. And they submit pictures, they submit videos, like they are like all in, like, here
great.
you go. So
great.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
I know you talked about, I might have missed the connection. You said 9th grade, they do the self-assess, yeah. What is done after that? Is that the Columbia Protocol, just to make sure that, or is it just kind of everybody looking for a sign or something?
Yeah, great question. So freshman year, Student Services partners with the PE department to deliver that curriculum and that assessment. Sophomore year, Student Services partners with all the health classes, both semesters, on a unit on mental health. and talking about identifying those who need support, identifying depression, very similar to like the mental health first aid training in terms of what they co-teach with the health teachers. And we are currently working on junior and senior year.
Okay. Final question, because unless you, if you mentioned it, I apologize. Is there a protocol when to engage with parents as it relates to self-harm or any of that, I guess?
Absolutely. They are part of the process.
Is there a protocol? I mean, when do you say it's time to get the parents involved?
Yeah, great question. It depends on the specific situation, but they will always come in before we will release the student, even if the assessment is unfounded and what was the word? I think flippant, a comment made, we're still calling home, usually with the student in the room, calling home, making sure the parents are aware of what happened. They're the eyes and ears after they leave the school. And so we want to make sure parents are always aware of the situation. 9 times out of 10, they're actually coming in the building.
Thank you again for what you guys are doing. It's invaluable. Thank you.
Mr. O'Hara?
Yeah, let me just reiterate, thank you so much. I mean, you guys, you can't point to a number, but prevention is everything we're looking for, really. A couple of quick questions. You say you're working on junior and senior. That means you're working on a touch at that time as well, so that you're in front of them every year at least once. Okay.
Yes, I think, our counselors right now have multiple touch points and we didn't really touch on that curriculum tonight at all. We'll do that when we come back and talk about school links and college counseling. So there are multiple touch points with them. We're still getting all that data from our juniors and seniors, but we're also looking for some additional touch points. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, another reason to be in front of them, basically, And I guess you have data going back to 2017, so like back the envelope, 3,200 call, 3,200 over 8 years is 400 a year. So you're getting at least one a day. I mean, that's more significant than I thought you'd be. I mean, and that's not even counting the summer, right? Where you're probably not getting as many.
Yeah, no, it's still active in the summer, quite
Okay.
active. But keep in mind, the conversations that folks are having with Text for Help or Safe to Illinois, we're not being told about all those.
Oh, so there's even more then. 400 is what we know, the 400 a year is what we know about.
No, we know about all of them because
Okay.
we can see a dashboard, so we know what category they fall in. Our assistant principals receive a text message or a phone call when it needs to go beyond that.
When it needs to
So
get escalated for some
you got
reason.
it.
Okay.
Yep.
But do we know if that's, since we have data going back to 2017, is it higher now than it was then? Is there a trend? I know you'd actually have COVID in there, so you could kind of see if we hear a lot about COVID affecting students. Did it on the numbers for that?
So I can, yes, every
You
year
can
our
come back
numbers,
later too, yeah.
have significantly increased. And I think it's for a couple different reasons. I think we are intentionally talking about a sense of belonging and intentionally wanting student voice to be heard. And so I do believe that they're starting to feel more comfortable. They have relationships, they feel more comfortable. Of course, we always encourage students, just walk down to student services, tell any adult any concern you have. But now being able to give them mechanisms outside of the school day and anonymous. Like there is no way for us to find out who submitted any of the forms unless they disclose their name.
Okay. And I guess you mentioned the personalized learning plans. And we started that this year, right?
Yeah.
So we
Next
should, so we should have some neat information, because you're right. It like the first time you're meeting the people prior was when there was a problem, but now you can meet them not under a cloud, as it were. And you're going to meet all the students that way, right? So that you're
Freshmen.
going forward. Yeah. So
Yeah.
eventually it'll be all the student, in 4 years. No, thank you so much. I guess the last thing I'd say is regarding Pete's last question about anything you might need. Obviously, you're kind of in the spot right now and you'll be driving away and you'll think of something. Just remember, we are here and we're more than willing, I think Pete's point isn't like you have to tell us now, but if something occurs to you, I'm pretty sure the board is more than happy to hear whatever you guys need. Thank you.
Ms. Hope?
Thank you. Do you have information about what percentage or how many students are accessing mental health related supports, whether it's through an IEP or 504 or just drop in or wanting to meet with people?
Yes, though not specific data to speak to right now, but we do in both buildings record students who are coming down for check-ins. We maintain a comprehensive list of students who have counseling services, whether it is through related services on an IEP, a 504, and also we see a subset of our students who have no plans, who come and connect with clinicians or counselors for counseling services, either like a short-term intervention or like a longer-term planning with an individual student. So we like maintain the records in both the buildings.
And how do students find out what, like who all is available to them and how to access them if they, especially if they don't have like a formal plan or support?
Yeah, so one example is I think it's in both of our buildings, is we push into all of our 9th grade support periods at North and South. We do a tour of student services. We introduce them to their student services teams. At both buildings, we have like support resource documents that we share with students. A lot of our staff are moving towards linking that into their email signatures. We've posted it anywhere that we are like able to potentially post the support resource documents, which might also contribute to an increase in students who are like submitting these forms because maybe it's just more visible in their general engagement with online resources. So I think at least for like our 9th graders, they have that experience right when they start. We did that in September, meeting the folks in student services and having access to the resources that are available to them. And that will continue over the course of 4 years. We also have our SST structures where we identify students and find them. Teachers make referrals to us. So I think students who are potentially in need of support, we have a lot of ways to identify them preventatively. And then I think we have some supports in place and some systems in place for students who may not otherwise show up on an indicator. They might have good grades, report positively on the SEL Wellbeing Survey, come to school every day, are quiet and complacent in the classroom, are compliant and complacent in the classroom. And so those are the trickier students that we have to go and identify.
Do we know have we looked at how mental health factors and absenteeism factors for students are linked and like, do we do anything mental health wise for students that are struggling to attend school consistently?
We do, and we do a couple of things. One, try to just really get them in the building and then also give the family the resources to get outside support if that needs to be the first step for them to get them in the building. Once they're in the building, obviously we're available, but that then is a tricky balance. Right? We don't want them missing more class to come meet with us. So we need to make sure that we're meeting them where they are. Is it maybe during a quick lunch period? Is it maybe during a guided study or an SRT or really quick before or after school? That's where those quick check-ins, check in, check out, the check and connect are really important because we really want to lay eyes on that student. But just we're so excited that they're in the building, that we're there kind of in the background a little bit for when they need us, but to just keep them in the building is super important. But that is a super important relationship with us and the parents.
Sorry, I just have 2 more questions. It sounds like we have so much for reporting and catching and focused on, assessments and suicidality and safety. Do we have, you talked about pushing into PE classes and a unit during health that's focused on mental health. I guess the question is, I don't know if you can answer, like, is that enough? Is there, and what are we doing specifically and proactively to teach kids who maybe aren't unsafe or meeting that threshold that they need more, but just to teach them coping skills and strategies or how to manage things that aren't necessarily suicidality, but panic or just not being able to cope with the stress of finals? Is that built into our curriculum?
Ish.
Okay.
And to go back to your first question, is that enough? I think we would say nothing is ever enough, right? We'd like the whole day. But it goes back to the relationship between student services and teaching and learning, which is so important, and those high yield practices and our tier 1 interventions in the classroom and what classroom teachers can teach to all the students that might need it at some point. Mark Brackett, the ruler guy, his book Permission to Feel is he really wants kids to learn how to name what they're feeling. And that's what sparked the mood meter, and to really know the difference between stressed and anxious, and to then be able to identify how you feel, create a coping strategy, then find a coping strategy that works for you. What works for me might not work for Lauren, but we might both need a strategy during exams. So that is absolutely something, one, we're working on, we're talking about all the time. That right there, that topic is part of our PLC time that we're working with our clinicians on, is a lot of those coping strategies around academic testing, kind of anxiety.
And lastly, I'm thrilled to see the increase in terms of the percentage of kids who feel a sense of belonging, and 72% is still. It
Not everybody.
hurts to feel like 28% of our students don't feel a sense of belonging. And I'm curious if we ask questions around like what the barriers are in their minds versus just trying to, like, what does that mean exactly, a sense of belonging, and how what can we do about that to keep it going up, hopefully more?
Right. We don't ask those specific questions. That's the anonymous part of the survey, but it goes back to that classroom and overall school experience. And it's okay to, and I would say couple that with resiliency, right? It's okay being uncomfortable. And they have to be able to sit with that. It doesn't mean you don't have a sense of belonging. It doesn't mean you hate school. It just means some days are hard. But we really think about that climate of the classroom and our kids able to take risks and feel like they can still grow and come. And that is then where that whole growth mindset and sense of belonging and all that kind of collide into that healthy kid that is going to thrive and succeed no matter what is put in front of them.
I would just be so curious to ask them, what do you think would help you feel? Like, just, what are their ideas?
So there was a part of the Panorama survey that's a short answer question. So I think I had 6,000 to look at. But thank you, Ryan, for doing that first. And it asks, like, who are your people in the building? Do you have people and that's a really important question. Do you have a trusted adult in the building that you can say, I'm having a bad day, or I need help, or how about I'm having a good day? We don't talk about that enough. Celebrate those successes. When you celebrate those successes, you're innately going to think positively sometimes, or not as down when you do stumble a little bit. So but that was really, really interesting data to read.
Thank you.
I just want to quickly add, the instrument we do use when we talk about belonging, it's more robust than just asking, do you belong or don't you? It actually unpacks it so we can look at the direct question, to what degree do you feel you belong in your school? But then it unpacks it to a feeling of support, feeling of being respected, and feeling of being understood. Those are the three kind of pillars of belonging. So we're able to take that overarching and then break it down into those three categories to determine where we fit. And as my colleagues were mentioning, one of the areas we talk about these high yield practices, and inviting spaces is our number one high yield practices, which really starts to unpack that belonging. So where we target our strategies is based upon what we're learning from our students in those different pillars.
Thank you.
Mr. Schein?
So a number of years ago, a superintendent came to the board, and I believe it was Dr. Charles, and he requested an expansion of mental health services. And I forget the year, but we added psychologists. It's been 6 years roughly. 6. So we made a very significant investment in personnel. And over that time, there have been many changes. And tonight, after viewing all of this, feels like the culmination at least the reporting of a culmination of a lot of work by many people to improve the mental health of our organization. And so it feels really good knowing that we started something with a vision a while ago. We put resources behind it. Staff came in here with strategies and implementations, and it really feels good to be here and listen to your input tonight. So a couple of questions I have. In terms of finding the students, because you've got the needle in the haystack thing going here. And I'm wondering if there's any relationship between students who feel that, more challenged. Are they students who are not in any club activity, sport, or art? And I know this is not exclusive because I can unfortunately think back through the many years I've sat here and we've had stories and, it's been like the most popular kid in the class and they're in 12 activities. But there's always outliers in situations. And I'm wondering if there's some relationship because that's that point of connectedness. I mean, because you can sit in class and just do your work, turn it in. There's no real connection necessarily with the teacher. As you said, student is not a problem. They do their work, they go home. But it seems like if they're involved, then there's another adult at a much closer touch point with that student. And I'm wondering if you got, I'm curious, that's all.
You're absolutely right. That is another touch point. I do not have data at this moment to support or contradict that. It is, yes, we know that all data across the country, the more involved the student is, the better their support system is going to be. So that I can get a phone call at 8 o'clock at night from whoever's on the bus home and we can talk through a problem. I would love that. I would love for every kid to have that experience, to have that trusted adult at some point in their day.
Mr. Shine, just to follow up on that, one of the areas for growth that we identified as we were actually reviewing the new clubs process is it's one thing to be rostered in a club. It's another thing to actively participate in a club. And so over the coming months, we will be working with Dr. Tarjan and Dr. Maranto to define what is active participation and what are the ways we have to track that information in order to feed into all of our systems to further identify what we oftentimes refer to as watch lists. Students that might be seeing a decline in participation, a decline in grades, a decline or an increase in disciplinary challenges, which will just help us further identify.
I see an opportunity for AI here.
What a well-stated concept, yes.
So, yeah, exactly. So in order for your work to be successful, requires a lot of input from staff who have the actual interactions with students. And so how do you drive through the organization the common language and the expectations so everybody's doing the same thing? So many years ago, Glenview had this character counts thing with like 5 pillars or whatever, and it started in kindergarten. They brought it right into the high school. Banners, posters, everybody was kind of saying the same thing. It looked the same. You go to the library and business was put the little, sticker in their windows. It was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. How do you get staff to with all the things that are on their plate to take the ownership to feed you the information? Thank you. That's my.
I'll hop in. So I think the common language is so important in both buildings, in all buildings, as a way to talk the same language with students. Super easy in an elementary school. Okay, maybe not super easy, but they have one teacher, right? They don't have 8 different teachers, 8 different personalities, 8 different combinations of students in there. And so that's really where we've leveraged the Titan values and the Spartan Class Act. So when you walk into classrooms, It'll say, you know, these are our values: respect, curious, inclusive, proud. What does that look like in a classroom? What does that look like in a bathroom? What does that look like in an athletic competition? And so you'll see those around the building, being able to identify how we utilize those values in their daily lives within the building. So when a student makes a bad choice, which they often do, it's, you know, what are the Titan values that didn't work there, and how do we repair that?
I understand that, but when you're talking about emotional cues, like the words here,
Yes.
how do you get this kind of language to a place where it's common and comfortable? I mean, I can't imagine, I think back to my high school, which is like, it's hard to think back, believe me, but I don't remember a teacher ever talking to me about words like cheerful, proud, you know, sad, fatigued, maybe fatigued in sports, maybe as a bad example, but you know, there's a lot here. So I'm kind of curious because this is sort of driving identification.
Yeah, that's one tool, is what I would say. Students, yeah, but it is one tool that the PE teachers and health teachers are definitely using, and other teachers in the building. The teachers, like you said, are the eyes and ears for us, right? And so we do have referral forms that teachers can submit concerns. We also have teacher feedback forms that we then send out to, let's just say one teacher identifies a concern, we can send it out to all teachers to get that information. I think, trust me, I hear what you're asking in terms of how we're like delivering that and teaching that and really having
Well,
that.
training that.
Absolutely.
I want to add a comment. So, Mr. Shine, when you first started talking, you were mentioning how do teachers utilize these terms and become familiar with them and be trained. And one of the things that we know, whether it's any of the topics we've talked about tonight or other things, as teachers, we have to experience using the language ourselves. And so, for example, over at Glenbrook North, Mrs. Hughes had utilized the mood meter and asked her staff at staff meetings to actually identify where they fall, to provide them the opportunity to have to navigate, oh, where really am I? And as we slowly introduce those concepts, as they're built into our day-to-day from a staff side, it naturally transcends into the classroom. And then we leverage different tools and modes for our teachers to incorporate into their class. But I always believe it starts with us as teachers, modeling, and part of modeling is learning as what we expect our students to do.
Somehow, pardon me, staff have to feel comfortable asking, I'm dumb it down a little bit, but how are you feeling today? You know, Jenny, you know, how's it going? Or something, but you're more specific here, trying to elicit more than, oh, I'm fine, right? The kid comes home from school, how'd it go? Fine.
Fine.
Had a good day, fine. Otherwise, it's like radio silence.
I think one of the messages we try to give is really talk to us about a change in behavior. And as the teacher, you're with the student the most during the week. So if something doesn't feel right, if something doesn't look right, let us know. We'll take it from there. They don't need to be the expert on this is exactly what's wrong. This is exactly how the student's feeling. If something is different, let us know we got it. We'll tease it out. And then that keeps the teacher and student relationship really intact. And we can do it.
And I do think there are several different strategies our teachers use. Sometimes you'll walk into a room and they grab a red or a green or a yellow Post-it note, depending how they're feeling. So it might not be that exact question of how are you feeling today, right? But they have a way to get a sense of where the class is before they start the lesson, kind of that mindful moment piece.
I also think it's really important that while we're speaking directly about the Glenbrooks, that this idea of ruler, this is one tool, but what ruler is really about is how do we help all people to recognize, understand, label and express their feelings. So there's numerous strategies. That's also being taught in our elementary schools, in our middle schools, that this notion of ruler is something as a township, a number of districts have been embracing. So this language, we know we don't want to lose the generation of students we have, but we're slowly bringing that language, the language of being able to recognize, understand, and label. Those are the steps. The mood meter, that's one expression of that. It's also when you look at our teachers' high yield practices, we're not specifically saying do ruler or do the mood meter. You can imagine if every class, every moment you were doing that, you would be mood metered out very quickly. So how do we help with the language of our high yield practices have the idea of inviting spaces and relationship? One way to get there is to help build the comfort that I can express myself. I can recognize my emotions. I can understand those. I can label those. And in the room, you have the relationships that can support that. The more we're doing that, the more we're teaching them a skill that for life that they can use. And that's it sounds overly simplistic, the acronym, but really that's at the core of being humans. That I'm recognizing what I'm feeling. I can understand why I'm feeling that, and I can actually put a label on it. If we can get there, we're going to be very successful, but it will take more than a couple training sessions, as you're alluding to.
Dr. Steinberg?
Thank you. Just an anecdotal basis, but as you Google or you read these things about people living longer, one of the 3 common indicators is socialization, being around other people. And we're here kind of like the last line of defense. This is the last time that our kids are going to be going back home after they leave school. So your work is extremely critical, and hopefully, I guess you heard our appreciation. Hopefully you hear from families and everybody. I'll start just going back to my colleague, Ms. Hope, in terms of curriculum. I was surprised when my kids were in high school that part of the PE education included like a health and in terms of food, doing exercise, ingraining on the minds of, okay, once you finish school, right, this is like style of life, right? So back to her question, do we have a part of our curriculum where it's like, check your mental health every day? You know, the same day it's like, brush your teeth every day, make sure your weight is okay, do your exercises, this. When are you doing your self-checkup, right? And curriculum says, what do you do when you don't feel okay? Things that takes a little bit, I know socially, I think we are better than we were 10, 15, 20 years ago, but there's this stigma about mental health. We don't talk about this. It's easier to talk about, you know, my feet hurt than to talk about, I woke up feeling blue this morning, right? Nobody walks into the office and says, and normalizing it, making it something where it's important to check it, putting it somewhere where is something that would be a skill for our students, you know, forever. And this probably is the last time that they can do it in a protected environment because they can go back home after class versus when they go to college or if they go somewhere else. So I definitely support what Ms. Hope was saying in terms of, I know our help is limited here, but whatever it is that you can push through to get somewhere in the curriculum to make it more common to deal with. And I think as I'm listening to everybody, you know, there's this dynamic between being proactive and being reactive. And a lot of these things happen to be reactive more than proactive because we need to wait for something that alerts us. But are there things that we can do to be more proactive to it? I know you mentioned a lot of strategies, but in terms of giving our kids, our students, tools to self-identify, to be able not only to look for help, but to get help. So anecdotally, the story of the Thursdays, part of my research had to do with stomach pain in K through 9 through a group of pediatricians. And everybody feels stomach pain on Mondays. And these kids, they need to go to school. And then by Thursday, everybody feels okay because it's only one more day until the school is over. So maybe there is some kind of complementary kind of issue here where the beginning of the week is really bad for certain age kids and the end of the week is really bad for other age of kids. But that's just anecdotal evidence. I wonder in terms of questions, you talk about languages. I wonder if we get, I'm saying we, if the staff gets some sort of training on cultural awareness. You know, we have so many different families of cultural origins in our district, cultures where they don't like to talk about certain things, cultures where it's better to show yourself as strong, cultures where saying I'm feeling happy means something totally different than somebody else feeling happy. And we also have generational differences. So how are we addressing that, at least with our staff?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So part of a social worker renewing their license is taking classes on cultural awareness. So that is part of their yearly sessions that they go to and typically bring back and share with the rest of the clinical team. I think we have, you know, I think you learn a lot over the years and learn a lot from our family language liaisons who are really connected within our community and the culture and help us navigate those situations.
All right, thank you. And I think Skip mentioned AI here, and the more you read about this is all these chatbots that people use for everything, including having conversations. So what are we doing in terms of bringing back the human component into it, which is nice to ask ChatGPT or whatever, Copilot about where to go out or things like that, but where it's not so reliable to tell the machine tool, I'm not feeling well, what I should be doing, all right? And it's so normalized these days that the answers are online, that how are we working with our community in terms of it's okay to be online, it's okay to do many things, but this particular thing, even if it may be great, it may not be the best thing for you because it's just giving you an answer. It's not analyzing your feelings. So do we do any work on that area?
Yeah, I think that's sort of like a multifaceted question. Probably depends on the area of the school that you're talking about. You know, like when I think about sort of like capitalizing on or utilizing AI from like a student services lens, you know, tools and filters and panorama, like kind of like sub-supported by AI might be able to help us in like aggregating data, identifying trends, which is all very helpful and like reduces some of like the cognitive load I have to kind of like go through the data and like the 6,000 responses Rebecca has. But we still have the individual personal check-in with students. Like we still bring students into the office. We still talk to them face to face. We still call families on the phone versus sending an email when possible. So I think we try to like value those like human connections that we have with students, even though we're sort of capitalizing on AI as a tool. From the lens of the dean's office, for example, I know they're not here presenting, but they will deliver a digital citizenship lesson to our 9th grade students. So they'll talk about their digital footprint, interfacing online, utilizing AI, communicating with peers and adults online, utilizing AI tools to engage in that communication with peers and adults online. So we'll find some tools to be able to like do some like push-in services to help students accept the reality that AI can be like a complementary and supportive tool, but taken too far can like lead to social isolation and exclusion. I think we see that students engage more online than sometimes in person, which is why I'm very happy to hear 2,000 GBS kids showed up to homecoming. So I think we have these like tools in place or supports in place to be able to encourage those human interactions versus just the online interactions. And then I can't really speak to teaching and learning, but I know they have some things in place to sort of navigate what AI looks like in the classroom space. But that's more of like a curricular piece and a little less about that human piece that I think that you're getting at, that we still try to make sure that we engage in.
Just to clarify, and I appreciate the answer, I think the confusion that happens right now is at a certain point, the individuals forget that they are chatting with just a computer system. And I like for them to use AI as much as they want. I think we don't repeat enough that if I go to the computer and I say, I'm not feeling well, what should I be doing? I'm gonna get a good answer. But the path from that answer, if I trust that answer, could send me the wrong way. Not because computers are transient, because it's just responding language to language. So there's nothing on the AI tool that will say, well, I'm identifying that you may be a risk for suicide right now. You will answer whatever question you have. So in many places, people are saying it's great to use as a tool for learning, for expanding, for doing different things. But remember, while your minds are still developing, it doesn't replace talking to the people when it's about your feelings. About everything else, 100%, rely more than anybody else. But there are cases, and you can Google these things, where they go into a spiral going down, because the AI will always have an answer for it. So if I feel sad, what happens? And an answer will come back. If I want to address feeling sad, what will happen? And the answer will come back, because it's not a human being saying, hey, hold on, this conversation is going to a dark place, and I want to change, I want to address it differently. So I think we don't say it enough on our daily interactions, because it sounds like we are like older people my whole job is AI, and I do research in AI, so I'm all in favor of it. But in this particular case, I think we need to be very clear on they will never replace a social worker, they will never replace a counselor, they will never replace a mental health support person that you need to talk to. Even if it gives you privacy, you do it from your home, you do it from your bed, it's not the same. That was my question / comment. I had the last thing, and I think going back to the curriculum and everything, I think it's important that, and probably you do it, but I think to Skip's point, we let people talk more about this thing. We need to remove that stigma about mental health, because that's what started these things in the first place. So if it's okay to talk about everything else, it should be okay to talk about mental health. You were talking, yes, doing the metric may get people tired after the third class or the fourth class, but asking people how are they feeling, or knowing that something happened and asking it again, I don't want to take your jobs away, but not having to limit mental health to one part of the school or one particular service provider, but being open to everybody, could help us, go a long way.
I want to thank you all for presenting. This has been a subject that has come up over and over around the board table, that this is something the board wanted to know more about, and I'm sure people in the community wanted to know more about. So this has been, very illuminating. And it sounds like we have some great systems in place. As you say, we're always looking for how we can do more. But I do think we are making progress from what you've described, so that's great. As Skip says, it's nice to see when you put resources against something that, that bears fruit. One thing that hasn't been brought up tonight, and perhaps it's outside of your bailiwick, but I'm just curious to understand sort of where Glenbrook Off-Campus kind of fits into all this. I know that is a tremendous program that provides, incredible support for students who need incredible support. And I'm not sure that a lot of people in our community are even aware that Glenbrook Off-Campus exists necessarily. And if you could, just because, who knows how many thousands of people are listening out there, if you could explain a little bit about, when that school is available to our students, and what supports they can provide for students who need something that's, really robust.
Yeah, absolutely. So Glenbrook Off-Campus is a public therapeutic day school for students who have an IEP, an individualized education plan. Just because they're off campus, they have the same protocols that North and South utilize, and transition services. So the things that we talked about tonight, whether it's the behavior digital threat assessment, the Columbia suicide screener, they are implementing that within off campus as well, and then transition services as appropriate. And that curriculum that we're utilizing is shared with them as well. Many of the students at off campus do go to one of the schools for part of their day. They remain basically a South or a North student. Oftentimes they are coming over for a class or two, and so they are also participating in that within the main building as well.
Excellent. And then, sorry, I'm just jumping around here a little bit with the questions that came up in my mind. It looks like we're making good strides with belonging, and I agree with Ms. Hope that probably 72% isn't where we want to be, but at least we're, moving up the ladder there. But it did seem that on the last metric that you showed, which I think was, yes.
Yep.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but just curious as to what you might think is driving that's so much lower in terms of the favorability, growth mindset. To me, that sounds like we have students who are afraid to try because they're afraid to fail. I'm not sure if that's the correct way of putting it. But can you expand on what that means a little bit and where we think we might be falling short and what we're doing to try to improve that?
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Breitag, do you want to share insight in this? Because this is more in your area.
See, I put something, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I gave
him a
cough drop.
I actually cough drop, so maybe candy. So growth mindset is in short, your belief that you can improve. Is your intelligence, your behavior, your social emotional skills, are those innate or can they be developed? So part of the thing to consider with growth mindset is that this number concerns us because if a significant number of our students believe they come to us with what they have and they cannot grow, then we're fighting that battle in all facets, the facets we're talking about tonight through the academic area. So for us, we're doing a number of things that, one, our high yield practices take on the notion of challenge and engagement, and also what we call clarity. And that notion is, how do we make it clear what we're doing and what it takes to be successful so students can start taking greater ownership of their learning? That's really what growth mindset, all the research points to. How can students start to take greater degree of ownership of their learning so they see they can actually improve from where they started? And to see those outside of just every few weeks when they see a grade or when they look at their report cards, but actually see progress towards mastery or growth. So we are concerned about this. We've seen this pattern. It's not going where we need it to go. We do believe our high yield practices are there. We also, as a starting point, again, we are always going to be facing a data point that's a little bit behind on that work. But the other thing that is clear is looking at our systems and our structures. What may be giving the impression to our students that you are where you're at and there's no ability for any kind of growth. So we've done great work with the Accelerated Placement Act and how we've constructed that to show students opportunities. We talk extensively here about pathways and different opportunities. We're also another area that is really important is balancing not just advanced placement courses, but our dual credit courses to show students those opportunities no matter where they are in their sequence or where they start. Those are system structures that lead to those numbers. If they see I start here and I end here, there's no opportunity for these other areas, then we're reinforcing that how you start is how you're going to end. So it's very much packaged. That those two words up there mean a lot to us, from what we explicitly say to what our structures say in our actions, and we have to align those two.
The last question that I had, just again, because these were things that came into my head as we was listening to the presentation. When you talk about welcoming spaces, or inviting spaces, I think is the terminology you used, inviting spaces. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means? Because it made me think about, the whole new all the new stuff and in the classrooms and how much more inviting they are. It sounds like it's probably more than just that, although I bet that actually contributes to it.
That is the fourth of the 9 on the structure of inviting spaces. So inviting spaces is how a person feels socially, physically, emotionally when they enter a space, when they're going to a space. I won't tell the story of high school and the anxiety I was having when I would go to my French class. That is not what you want. You want excitement and energy. And when you get there, you want a feeling of, wow, they recognize me, they know my name, they know about me. And then it's not just the student-teacher relationship, it's how the space feels peer-to-peer. So there's all those interactions that take place in an environment. Both the physical spaces help, and then the relational portion of that space is equally important. So we have a number of indicators that we're working through right now as part of this. I think it's really important. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. When we talk about high yield practices, that's a language that we are working through. What I would call soft launch that language last year, and we have a 5-year plan. You'll hear more about that when Teaching and Learning is up there really sharing those pieces. But it's important to know that this is early in the process, but inviting spaces includes a lot of indicators, even something as simple as how do students feel at the threshold. Some of the research says it's 5 steps before the doorway that we start to understand a student's going to make a decision about the impact of this space and what that space is going to do in this moment. So what's the first face they see? Is it a smile and a hi? Is it a greeting? All of those things matter. And I would say unequivocally, our teachers believe deeply in that, and they go after inviting spaces because they know if we can create that, so many other factors fall into place. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Follow-up.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up back to growth mindset. I really like, Ryan, what you mentioned in terms of structural issues that may lead to this. So that led me think also to how students think about this, because the type of district that we are, I know we are set to offer many things, right? From the academy program to this, even when we talk about accelerated, ways of getting advanced credits, or even some people were like, what, doesn't this dilute a little bit the value of it? So it seems like it's inherent to us to be in a competitive district, whatever competitive means, all right, for the goodness and the not so good of it. But there's a big difference between, I was never going to be a basketball player or anything like that, but I could feel if I improved through the year, I would be happy if I make 3 free throws in a row. I shouldn't feel bad because I'm not going to be a pro. My height and different things wouldn't make it. So there has to be some equivalency here in between. I came in.
I got you.
There has to be some equivalency as you learn on the process in terms of, hey, how did I started my process of high school and where I'm at right now? And definitely, I would say most people experience a lot of growth here, but maybe the issue is we don't know. We being the individuals, not the systems, don't know how to capture that growth. That keeps saying, I remember one of my kids, I shouldn't say this, I'm sure he's not listening. He would say, I'm not an A student, I'm a B student. And I would be like, what do you mean with that? I mean, are you defining yourself as being an A student or a B student? Are you defining yourself by how much you know? And he went and I think got perfect score on the math ACT. And he's like, I thought you were a B student. So sometimes kids self-define themselves by comparing to other people instead of looking at their personal. So I know we have many questions from them. Are we working on these assessments to be able to capture really if they are growing or not, or just the impression that they have if they are growing?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for this team, but I do think the work that they're doing with I continue to call it the 4-year planning process. I apologize. That is the work, and that curricular work is what is going to be the indicators for students about their growth. It's also, I have a little bit of love for technology, as you all know. I think School Links is that opportunity to see it in a digital format to be able to look at where I'm going, to see the trajectory, to see that information is just a way to put it in front of students. Because like many of us, let alone a 15 or a 16-year-old, you get caught up in that moment. It's hard to see the whole picture of what you've experienced. So the more we're able to take what we see in Panorama on our students and what we're so proud of when we see all that and start to blend that into School Links in our curriculum, the more students will see it in front of them. And also their families, their guardians, the more we can also start doing that. We're not there quite yet, but I think in partnership, that's what our two teams are how do we get that? And that's, I just use the simple term, how are we more explicit with our students? Let's not assume they know. Let's not assume they're processing it the way we are. How can we be more explicit with them? That's going to start to break down what may be a barrier that they just perceive that they flatlined or perceive they can't get better.
Thank
you.
Well, this was great. It's interesting to hear how it all ties together, and you've previewed for us a little bit what we'll get from teaching and learning, so that looking forward to as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren and Rebecca. You guys did a wonderful job. And please know you're okay to leave.
All right. The next item on our agenda, 6.2, is opportunities for the Board of Education to engage with the community, another hot topic around the board table.
All right, friends. This particular topic is another topic that was brought up by individual board members, but I have to say it's probably the third or fourth time that we've talked about this over about a year, maybe a year and a half. So it's great to finally be here this evening. A lot of our conversation that we'll engage in tonight comes from some difficult situations the school district has gone through over the past few years. And just to be very candid, when there's difficult situations, we oftentimes have a wide range of individuals with perspectives come to talk to the board during community comment. And it's very much a one-way dialogue. In fact, that's how it's set up in our board policy, that we don't respond to individuals' concerns in the meeting. Now, I'm going to put an asterisk there because one of our commitments is that we do follow up with individuals after the meeting if they express interest or and also share their information, so we can do that and make that connection. That's oftentimes when you'll see an administrator around a table step away and go meet that individual in the lobby for a conversation. But board meetings aside, one of the important elements of governance is making sure you have opportunities to engage with the community. And the community has a wide range of stakeholders. Our largest group of stakeholders in the school community are our students and our parents, our families. But there's also individuals in the community that do not have children currently in the schools. Maybe they are growing into the system, or maybe they've already celebrated their transition post high school. What we've done to kind of structure our conversation is I've asked Mrs. Smith to kind of work through some categories of engagement opportunities. Before she goes through them and introduces them, I want to emphasize something that we've learned from other school districts about, and also something that many of us administratively have experienced in different districts that we've worked in. It can be really easy to say, let's create something new. Let's create a new event. It's going to happen once a month. It's going to be in this situation, and so on and so forth. But if we actually look into the feedback that we have directly heard from our families, similar to some of our students, are saying there's a lot going on and it's hard to keep track of it. So one of the encouraging bits of guidance that I would offer is, what are opportunities to begin with where individual board members, maybe two board members, can join something that already exists? That can also help make some of those things that already exist even better. And I'll just give a real easy one. When I first started in the district, some of our parent association meetings, honestly, we were lucky if we could get 10 people to show up. And I go to the most recent two Glenbrook North Parent Association meetings where we saw in excess of 50 parents coming. In fact, the last one, even more. Now, it was a topic of college, so it was a very popular topic. But people coming to learn, to engage, and always having that opportunity to ask questions. So anytime that we can really bring parents together, not just for one topic, but to talk about the holistic experience of their child is a great opportunity. So just maybe keep that in mind as you hear some of the things. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Smith to share some thoughts.
As you were talking, Dr. Gravel, I was thinking that it's also important as the board is contemplating what they want to do, that you really think about what engagement means. Sometimes when we say we want to engage in the community, we think about bringing them in here. And I think that both Mr. Glowacki and Mr. Downing tonight were talking about ways that they've engaged the community, where they've gone out to the community, where it's the parent association and the booster club. So we really have to think about that is a way that you hear from people, that people stop you in the hallway, they stop you after the meeting and they say, hey, I was thinking about whatever it is, and you can have a conversation with them and bring that back to the board. I've worked in several districts where we've done some board engagement, and some things have worked well and some things have worked well at the beginning and not worked so well afterwards. And so I reached out to some of my colleagues also in other high school districts and asked them what they were doing and what was working and what was not working. And so we were able to have a conversation with about that as well. So we did come up with some ideas on ways that you can build relationships with key stakeholders. And there are some of the things that are already in place. If you want to, we belong to an organization called EdRed. And you have that opportunity, if you attend those EdRed meetings, to talk to legislators, to talk to other school leaders from around the area, and find out what are some really important topics that are affecting school districts all over the place. And so be thinking about, and Dr. Gravel probably will let you know when those events are possible. They have an annual meeting, they have some luncheons. Sometimes you can join the meetings by Zoom. And so there are opportunities to engage in that way. When I worked, now, of course, Springfield is a very political town. So when I was the director of communications for the Springfield Public Schools, we had our legislators that came in on a regular basis and really just sat around a table like this. And we had conversations about what are things that are happening in the Capitol building that affect schools, and how can, and our legislators that we had, they were really, our state legislators were really great about asking those questions, kind of like Mr. Glowacki did tonight with the guests, was what can we do to help you? And so engaging with those legislators was really gave them an ear into what was happening in the trenches in the schools. And we were able to tell them the kinds of support that we needed in the State House. So that might be something that we can do here. But not only the state legislators, but also engaging with the villages. Each village has a state of the village. If you attend those meetings, have an opportunity to kind of rub elbows with the trustees from the villages. And last year when I attended the Northbrook one, the other superintendents were there. So I got a chance to talk to the superintendents from the feeder districts as well. And speaking of that, just engaging with the feeder districts. I know that Dr. Gravel meets regularly with the other superintendents in the township and also the feeder districts. But in one of the other districts where I worked, the superintendent and the board presidents of the districts, of the surrounding districts, met. And it was not only, it was at a time when I worked in a unit district, so the other unit districts that were kind of our like districts. So when we think about our New Triers, think about some of the Deerfield, some of those other districts that we kind of compare ourselves to. And then they had the opportunity as the superintendent and the board president to talk about items that may be affecting all of the different districts. Let's see. At the communications committee meeting, we were talking about going to the Rotary Club and the Kiwanis Club. And that is not only an opportunity for the board members to engage with people who may not have children in our school districts, but it also, sometimes those organizations are looking for speakers, guest speakers. And this would be a great opportunity for our board members to be able to go to those meetings and talk about what's happening. Facilities master plan, that would be a great opportunity to talk about what's happening with our buildings and engage with the community, and also get questions from people that may not come to our and ask us questions or make public comment. I know that you go to football games and other activities, but just being visible and approachable around community events and also around school district events is really great. But then if we're talking about bringing people to us, I've worked in districts where we've hosted community coffees, but we've gone out to a coffee shop that's in the community. I know the Glenview Grind is a wonderful little coffee shop, and they may be able to, Dunkin' Donuts, did you say?
No, they have donuts.
Oh, they have donuts. Okay. That might be an opportunity for board members to just say, we're going to be there on Tuesday between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. and come and talk to us about whatever. I've worked in districts where that was not very well received. You get the same people who are coming and making public comment, but other districts where it was really a great opportunity, and people not only who knew you were going to be there, but people who just happened upon said, oh, this is really great, and I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you some questions. I've also been part of Realtor breakfasts. And again, I don't want to go back to Springfield because it was a long time ago that I was there, but we did have some Realtor breakfasts because Springfield School District and Springfield town are not contiguous borders. So the city of Springfield supports 7 school districts. And so realtors sometimes would tout the fact that the houses that they were selling were in I called them the suburbs, and that made people angry, were in the suburbs of Springfield. And so we brought realtors in to really showcase what was happening in the school district, so that when they were talking to people who were buying houses all around Springfield, they could tout the Springfield Public Schools. So that might also be another great opportunity to bring people in who are talking to those people who are moving into our community, who might be moving from one part of our community to another part of the community, and really give them the information that they need to be able to tout the schools. So those are just some of the things that I've either been part of or I heard from some of my other colleagues that are really things that the board can think about to engage the community.
And so at this point, our goal was to open it up for dialogue, discussion. We're here to help facilitate. I want to offer one important reminder. 2, I guess, important reminders. 1, when we talk about engagement opportunities, there is a limit on the number of board members who can be present for any sort of function. And so you're really limited to 2 board members that can go to a function representing the board in that capacity. Different than if you happen to go to a football game and there's just a variety of people there. The second thing is, and this is in keeping with our communication guidelines, but also within board policy, it's important that board members in their engagement represent themselves as individuals, but do not speak on behalf of the Board of Education. The Board of Education only speaks through formal meetings as a whole. And I bring that up, I know we've talked about it, but it's always good to remember, because sometimes you might get put into a situation where answers are being sought and it's not the appropriate setting, or it needs to come through a channel. So just offer those 2 things.
Mr. O'Hara?
Yeah, I don't know, it sounds interesting. It goes back to actually those personalized learning plans we were just talking about earlier, where, you know, they're meeting the parents before there's issues. And so in some ways it'd be better to have more community contact. Not that there is going to be an issue, but over time, something else will come up. And when people get upset, it's best to have a better relationship beforehand. So I guess I'm for it. I wonder, I think partly, hopefully we do go back to the point where there's isn't as much engagement because people are happy with what you're doing. You know, it feels like once people are happy with what you're doing, there's less engagement in some ways because they focus their attention on stuff they're not happy with elsewhere, if you will, you know? And so the school doesn't become an issue they're thinking about. But I'm happy to be available and go to these meetings, especially. I'll go to the grind and have some donuts and hang out and be ready to talk to people.
Knew I could count on you for that. Ms. Hope?
No, in reading this before the meeting also, I think like Mr. Glowacki said, being at the Parents Association meeting was fantastic. And maybe there's a way, and I think it's suggested in the memo, to formally become a part of the agenda, or just to have something on there to say, we're here if anyone wants to, and to plan to stop and chat afterwards, in case people don't feel comfortable or don't know that that's an option. But I'd love to continue doing that. And these are great ideas.
Excellent. Mr. Shine?
Just sign up. Sorry.
I
Is that
think-
something we'd sign up then for?
I think that the idea, what we had talked about, preparing for the meeting was that, RJ or Carol would reach out to the board members and see what you're interested in.
Great.
You know,
Okay.
different people
Sorry.
might have
Sorry, Steve.
different,
Yeah, no,
different
it's
things
kind
that
of
are more
along the same lines.
appealing.
I think we kind of need to formalize
Mhm.
to the, pardon me, so we create an expectation for ourselves
Yes,
that we're gonna go to these certain things and then we can come back and talk about them. Because if we leave it ad hoc, I think we'll have what we have now,
Right.
which is.
best intentions, but not so much
Right.
follow through. Yeah.
So it's good.
Dr. Steinberg?
Do administrators still go to like Rotary and, some of these other?
Yeah, our relationship with community organizations, we'll just say, has kind of fluctuated. We've had active membership with the Northbrook Rotary and the Glenview Northbrook Kiwanis Club, but our consistent organization membership with the Sunshine Rotary Club of Glenview has not been as consistent. So we're slowly starting to reestablish some of those partnerships and relationships.
Those organizations really active
Yeah,
more than like in name?
so I'll give you a great example. All of the Rotary clubs and the Kiwanis Club donate considerably to our scholarship funds. So they definitely have activities going. I'm just now recently getting involved, and just like everything, there might be the same members that attend the weekly meetings. But at the end of the day, they are a dedicated group. And then when they have events, more people come out. But they do have decent membership lists.
Dr. Steinberg?
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I think having some kind of like plan, it's better. I do think that we need to rotate on the plan because we are not representing the board, we are representing ourselves. So we all think, some things we think alike, some things we think differently. So we don't want to create a cadence where a particular group always listens to Marcelo's opinion that may be different to any of your opinions. So having different phrases show up in different places. I do have a clarification question because in particular with parents meeting, we have members of the board that are parents. So although we don't want to have a quorum at a meeting, this is not our meeting. So if at that particular meeting, the four of us are there, but only like Jack is today the board representative, the rest of us are there like parents. Does that have a contradiction to the open meeting act or anything?
No, I think you're okay.
Deciding, discussing topics.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
okay.
All right, so the other point that I want to make is, I think one of the issues that we've been facing, and I don't know what's the solution to this, it's that our main issue is when we get the community extremely engaged over something, and the only way they have to express this is to come here and argue with each other because we cannot talk. And I agree 100% that we shouldn't be answering on an open meeting act. We cannot even ask them more questions in terms, can you be more specific? So they cram their anxiety, for lack of a better word, in a 2-minute speech that's similar to social media, ends up being extremely charged. So the next one that comes in, it has to be more charged than the previous one or repetition. So I wonder if we can have something that will preempt these things, like having a meeting that is not a board meeting, where I remember when we did when we presented the investigation about the annual, about the work yearbook, that after everybody complained, we did the presentation of the investigation, and then 2 weeks later, when we had a meeting, people started coming and saying, "Oh, now that I heard about the investigation, I'm happier than I was before." But in the meantime, people had to wait 2 weeks, and then we had to listen to everybody that was upset about something that they were going to be less upset 15 minutes later, because we had a presentation that addressed most of what these people were going to say. So we generate an environment that is not needed at that point. So I wonder if in certain cases, certain circumstances, certain topics, we can have community presentations instead of a board meeting. And maybe 1 or 2 board members just to listen, not to interact with the community. You can interact in terms of asking questions, but just to show the community that we're trying to get the pulse of something. We are not there to discuss things, but we're there to get a better understanding of it. So there's no need for 30 people to align here and compress their anxiety, again, not to use a different word, in a 2-minute speech.
Yeah, so
That's the purpose of the community, all the committees that we have now, inviting the committee.
People coming to the
those-
communities.
Yeah, so facilities, communications, and any others, special work groups. and
But
stuff.
they're still open meeting act, so I'm not sure we can use that mechanism for, so somebody comes and says something in 2 minutes. The way this works, we are not going to ask them for clarification. We are not going to ask them what will make this thing better. We will let the 10 people that came to talk. And then we'll go with our business of addressing whatever was put on the agenda of the meeting.
But that's what I'm saying, shouldn't we be drawing them into the committees to be raising those questions and point during that where it is more, there you don't have the same structure, it's an open.
No, I think it's the same structure on the committee. Okay.
So in terms of community comment, yes, we follow the same structure, the same procedures. However, committees do have more of a working group feel. So the likelihood you would respond is maybe a little higher. But to your point, presentations. We oftentimes will use our parent associations, our booster clubs as opportunities to do those presentations and then to engage. I think the real difference is, and I think you mentioned it, oftentimes administration runs the presentation, but board members are there to listen and maybe share comments here and there, but not, the board members not presenting formally on behalf. And that avoids all of the other challenges you could run into. But those meetings all work very well.
I think can make a big, just me, okay, but can make a big difference because then, I don't know, Pete and Matt come and say, Wednesday we were at this meeting where RJ presented this, and this is what we thought about it, and then we can discuss it here because we can talk about the
Yeah.
agenda, and that gets that idea of not just simply engaging it, but being attentive to the community needs.
Absolutely.
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Glowacki?
I was just going to suggest, when I attend these meetings, I'm attending as a parent. Typically, I happen to listen. I have my board here, so you hear information, you utilize it. Try to be open when you can and everything. But to your point about Open Meetings Act, generally not. If they do ask for a formal presentation, then we coordinate. But in the 7 years I've been involved, and I know some have been involved much longer than I have, thanks to kids and everything. Yeah, it hasn't come up. Really, it's usually very bread and butter, basic stuff that they're very, how do I help my kid get into college? How do I help them survive athletics and activities? How do I help them with theater? I'm trying to think of some of the other fun topics that they have. I mean, it's very basic in terms of what it is. How do I thank the teachers? And
It's a good one.
and those are things that they're doing, not so necessarily bored, but it's also a good place to vet things. In terms of if there's something, bring their attention, we have committees. You bring attention to them, you make an announcement, or you talk to the staff, which are generally working with them, that they help reinforce that message.
Just want to add a little piggyback onto Mr. Glowacki's comment. Today, we heard a wonderful presentation on what we're doing about mental health, but a lot of people don't know. But it certainly is front of mind for a growing number, and hopefully one day everyone will have it front of mind. The week before, we talked about safety and security, and we can keep on going through the topics. One of our goals that we wanted to do was to start building a library, a repository of not only resources that you can read, but presentations that you can review later on. This is coming soon. Presenting them at the board meeting, but then when people reach out and ask questions, we have a place that we can send them to that has a great starting point. Much better, candidly, than sending an email to us and maybe having a 10-minute phone call. Because like we really dig into things here. These presentations are great. And the one thing I've learned, sometimes it's literally just being in the meetings to listen, to hear someone have the conversation. And if we have other, we oftentimes call them our advocates or our cheerleaders. If other people hear it, they can say, hey, we absolutely have that. You should go here. Here's the information. And so just sometimes being present is really all that matters. I will say that I had the opportunity to go to the village of Glenview for a presentation I shared with the board, talk about the strategic plan. And there are some elected officials that I had never met before. I was amazed at the number of individuals who reached out and said, my gosh, I knew we were always in great schools. I didn't know everything like was as strategic as it is, that we have this big pathway. Thank you for sharing it. Sometimes it's just getting it out there in whatever way you can. More than happy to reach out and send a little touch base with each board member individually. You can say if there's something that sparks your curiosity right now, and then we can compile it, share it with the board members so you can see and take it from there. You know, there's a pretty big, exciting thing. We're talking about a master facility plan. Mr. Downing got appointed for that, that sharing.
Well, I was just
What-
gonna echo your comments about the village and stuff. I have a few of the folks that I know on the village board. They're not aware of some of the things that we're undergoing. And it just comes up, the question, they assume because they're overwhelmed with information. You happen to be the source of information. So if you can be out and just
Yeah.
available, that makes a world difference.
Mr. Downing?
No, I think it's necessary. And I like the local government. I think it's a really good piece that, especially as we continue to try to improve the school from facilities and everything else. I mean, I think it's important that we get to know our government officials. And I know, I like Pete, know a lot. Yeah, I know. So,
Facilities guy.
yes. But anyway, I think it's, and I'm happy to volunteer wherever you guys think you need me.
Thank you very much, Carol and RJ, for putting everything together on this. I do think that, you know, each of us will probably have our particular, you know, point of interest that we would like to contribute to, and look forward to the follow-up, because as Mr. Shine says, you know, we need to get the ball rolling on this, and I think it will require us to make some commitments to doing that. I understand, I think, Mr. O'Hara's point, and agree in a sense that, you know, if we don't have a lot of people coming to us, it may be because they're satisfied. But I also think that like establishing these relationships in the good times are what pays dividends in the bad times, because there will be times where we will have hard situations arise. But then there will be people who, if they don't have any idea about the commitment and goodwill of the board and the administration and the staff at these schools, they come into it cold, basically. But if they've already, you know, had an opportunity to interact with board members or administration or, you know, in the community, that lays this groundwork for, you know, a feeling of being in it together, and wanting to support each other. And I'm hoping that, you know, that's something that we know we're going to have other situations that arise where there will be, as you say, people who are not happy, not satisfied, have issues, but we want them to feel like they can approach us, they can trust us, they know that we're trying to do the right thing. And the way that they can feel that way is if they've met us already and they've seen the goodwill that we bring to it. So I think this is really important work. It's something that our communications committee is also working on. So everybody sign up, go to coffee, have a donut. Okay, great. Then I believe that takes us to some sort of budget issue. Wait, let me get my agenda out here.
So Vicky, as you get prepared to review this, each year, the school district engages with an external auditor. The auditor works directly for the Board of Education and performs an unbiased, formal review of the school district's financial statements and operational practices. As part of that, we go through a review of a wide range of transactions that includes revenue transactions, expenditure transactions. It's through a sampling process that's in accordance with generally acceptable accounting principles, which is a little more specific to governmental accounting, if you will. At the end of the audit, we prepare a annual comprehensive financial report, or an ACFR. This report is utilizing a format dictated by the Government Finance Officers Association and the Association of School Business Officials International. That format is necessary in order to be eligible to receive financial reporting awards, which the school district has received for several decades on a variety of levels. To that end, every year, school districts across the nation go through a process where we find areas for growth. Our auditors incorporate some of those areas for growth, which are not necessarily specific to our district, but are nationwide areas that have been identified. You'll hear about some of those tonight, and then specific ones to our district based on their review of our books. Real quick, easy takeaways. We have a clean audit with some minor recommendations. Recognizing the time, I'll ask Ms. Tarver to give a quick overview, of which I believe she will embrace.
Absolutely. So as RJ said, we have qualified for these awards through the GFOA and ASBO International. For ASBO International, this will be our 17th year receiving this award. And for the GFOA, it'll be our 16th year receiving the award. We did receive an unqualified or clean audit, which basically means that the auditors did not find any material misstatements or misrepresentation of our financial data. So we're good to go, essentially. We're transparent. The financial information is accurate and as presented. The net position increased from 133.6 million to 143.4 million. When your net position increases, it means that you're financially healthier than you were the year before. Some of the things that can happen is your assets start to get higher than your liabilities, or your liabilities decrease in relation to your assets. It's very important, if we do decide to go out for any kind of long-term debt, to have a good net position is very helpful in our ratings. The total fund balance decreased this year from 127.6 million to 126.9 million. That is related to the purposeful use of fund balance for capital projects. Even with that decrease, our ending fund balance last year is approximately 52% of our revenue budget for this current year. We retired 8.1 million of long-term debt, and our expenditures exceeded revenues by 692,000, again, related to the purposeful budget of the capital projects. Stepping into the findings, we have 4 current findings and 1 prior finding or repeated finding. The first one is the segregation of district and parent organization bank accounts. We have long held the tradition of helping our parent organizations open up their bank accounts using our EIN number. Our auditors have asked us to work with those groups to get their own EIN number, because as the treasurer, I'm not a signer on their accounts. So to have their accounts under our EIN number is a misrepresentation of our financial picture. So myself and Scott Rosen, my controller, we're going to work with the parent groups this year to get them switched over. The negative book balance on cash reconciliation is really basically our financial system is set up to, when we run our summer payrolls, that we book on 6/30, so they hit the proper fiscal year, but we're not releasing those checks until July or August. It's creating a negative cash balance in the prior fiscal year that doesn't match our bank statement balance. It's a software issue that I need to work with Skyward on to see if we can resolve it or if there's a workaround to that. So it's nothing, it's really not significant. It's nothing that we could control at this time. The IT awareness and monitoring of emerging risks is something that GASB has directed all auditing firms to identify as a recommendation in this year's audits for all governmental entities, just because the increase of, cyber security and risks that we all experience, or all government units experience. And the last current recommendation is unresolved prior year transaction. This is again a financial system Skyward issue where an outstanding accounts receivable was reversed in the wrong fiscal year, which created a restatement of beginning balances. It really is a training issue, just teaching my controller the proper way to reverse a transaction that needed to be reversed. So again, nothing major. We can learn and move on from it. The repeated recommendation is, again, the funds over balance. This comes up almost every year with our Ed Fund and our Capital Projects Fund. The Ed Fund over budget is due to the inclusion of student activities. Student activities isn't really a revenue and expenditure, it's a liability, but they include it as a revenue and expenditure in our financial reports, and sometimes that can create that illusion that we've gone over budget. So I have a plan on how to approach that moving forward with our budget, is to overinflate what I think the activity in student activities will be for the year. The second one is our Capital Projects Fund. When we build the budget for capital projects, when we're talking about summer projects, we're building that budget in the next fiscal year, not the fiscal year that's being audited. But what the audit does is it takes a portion of those projects that have been completed to a certain extent, and it will accrue that back to the fiscal year. So while we're budgeting on a cash basis, we're financial reporting on an accrual basis. So I think moving forward, Kim and I, when we develop her budget, we'll have to kind of keep that in mind and maybe create that line item that says hold for accruals or hold for construction in progress. So we're more budgeting on an accrual basis rather than a cash basis. So that's really the extent of our recommendations. I'm not scared by them. I think we're good. I think we learned a little bit and we can move forward and be better next year.
There is no action for the board to take regarding this evening. Every year, a requirement of ISB is for the board to ultimately approve the financial statements of the board. That would come back to the board on consent next week, in 2 weeks. And then the ACFR serves two purposes. One, this is relevant to the facility master plan conversation we had. The ACFR is a comprehensive financial report, which is 30 times more than what the Illinois State Board requires. However, it is an absolute requirement when working with credit rating agencies for potential debt or things of that nature. So this is a very important document. So we'll use it for a variety of purposes, and it will also be submitted to the GFOA and ASBO International for upcoming awards. And then Vicki is putting the finishing touches on our PAFR, which is the popular annual financial report, which is the short, pretty, abridged version. And I just want to emphasize what Vicki went over. We take transparency, I would argue, to a higher level than so many districts. Directly in our PAFR, that easy to view document, we list all of our audit recommendations because we want we want our community to be aware of where our auditors have identified successes, areas for growth, and what our plan is moving forward.
Did any board member have any comments or questions for Ms. Tarver?
Nice job.
So this will come back on, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Steinberg?
Vicki, can you go back to the first slide? Yeah, so just for clarification, when we talk about the net position and we talk about our assets and liabilities, meaning I could see that we retire 8 million, so that has an impact on the net position. But it's not, it seems like we had an increase larger than 8.1.
Yes, part of that is because we have also invested in more capital. And that will increase our assets as well as that retiring that debt reduced our liabilities, which in the end increased our net position.
Perfect. The second question, you mentioned this issue with the student activities.
Yes.
So you said we cannot have it on a separated account. It's not a cash account. Is there any way to clean it so you don't have to do this guessing game at the beginning of every?
There is, I just have to pay better attention to it as I'm building the budget, to be honest with you. I have to pay a little bit more attention to how much I'm estimating there.
2 comments. Glenbrook has a very active student activity account portfolio compared to the overwhelming majority of school districts in the United States.
Yes.
In excess of $1 million of
Oh,
transaction.
no. In excess
Well-
of $3 million. Yeah.
I was trying to be generic, but yes.
Transparent.
I appreciate that. So, but
It's a lot
the
more,
real
yeah.
reason why this is a topic is 4 years ago, the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB, changed the requirements of reporting on student activities. So this is one of those, the money in student activities is not property of the school district. The money is property of the respective organizations and the funds. We simply are custodians of those funds. So what GASB said is, in essence, you can move everything to a revenue expenditure portfolio, which wouldn't work in our type of scenario, or you can record these one-time entries. We just need to maybe reflect a little better more on a trend line analysis.
Yeah.
To hit a middle of the road where we're predicting revenues and expenditures at the amended budget time, which is more towards April, in anticipation of the end of the year.
Yeah.
And where you really get unanticipated large deposits is when you have a very large world languages exchange tour coming that has 20 people spending $3,000+ on their tickets. That's where you can have issues. So just some trend line analysis we need to do better.
No, I think it's unfair, puts a lot of pressure on your team, and it's a guessing game. Because
I just have to get better at, like RJ said, the trend analysis. I just have to kind of refine what I'm looking at and what I'm predicting and do it at the amended budget time rather than the original budget time.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so this will come back on consent at the next meeting. Thank you, Ms. Tarver. The next item on the agenda is possible topics for future board meetings. You may recall that Dr. Gravel had circulated to the board several weeks ago, maybe a few couple months ago now, a list that we put together that solicited input from all board members. And many of these topics have been sort of penciled in.
Yep.
For upcoming dates. I don't think there's anything right now on the agenda for next week, but if there is anything that a board member would like to bring up now as a possible topic or would like to suggest by an email or a phone call to myself or to Dr. Gravel, we would be happy to hear that. I'll look forward to your calls. All right. In that case, then next time we will be having a closed session tonight. I understand it will be short. I'm promised it will be short. So we will be going into closed session to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. That is section 2C1 of the Open Meeting Act. So we will adjourn.
Use the emotion.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Would someone please move for us to
So
go into
moved.
closed?
Second.
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
You
at 9:56 PM.
We are back in open session and we have a action coming out of closed.
So
Yes, and there we go. So we'll have Dr. Steinberg will be making a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the termination of Constantinos Zacario as presented in closed session.
Second.
Ms. Smith?
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Mrs. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Schein,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Mr. Downing,
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Pete is stained.
And then Christina,